So you want to do an LS swap on a 68 to 72 A body? Well, I'm going to show you how I did it. Let's take a look. So this is a 6-liter LQ4 engine, and I'll show you pretty much what I did to make all this work. Behind it is a TH400, otherwise known as a Turbo 400 transmission. It's just an automatic. Those things came in just about everything in the 60s through the 80s, and I just modified the flywheel so that it would bolt up to the torque converter. It's a stock LS flywheel, and you just had to re-drill the holes in it so that it would line up. There's also an adapter that goes right in the middle of the torque converter that aligns the torque converter to the crankshaft on the LS engine. Other than that, the transmission just bolts right up to the engine. Down here, I used stock exhaust manifolds, but you can see how incredibly close it is to the frame. There's probably, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch between the two. So looking back, I think I should have probably ground down the manifold a little bit so there's a little bit more space there. And that way when the engine rocks, it doesn't potentially knock on the frame. It hasn't done that yet, but I think there is the potential to do that. So I think doing this again, I would probably just grind that manifold a little bit. The other side, I'm actually not sure which manifold this is. It's possible that it's a Camaro manifold or a pickup truck. I'm not entirely sure. But you should be able to match this up with whatever you have, and hopefully you can figure out which one it is. To mount them, I used ARP cylinder head bolts, or exhaust manifold bolts, and obviously some new gaskets. To mount the actual engine in the car, I'm not really thrilled with how I did it, but it does work. I think going back, I would have bought the UMI engine mounts because that's what everybody uses and they work really well. But I used stock engine mount brackets and a adapter plate, the kind that you get, from everywhere, ICT Billet or eBay or wherever, to mount to the engine. There is also like an 1/8 inch spacer between the frame and the engine mounting bracket. I think that if I was to have gone a little bit thicker on that, it probably would have been a little bit easier on me. So I would probably recommend like a 3/16 spacer between the engine pedestal and the frame. For the accessories, these are all truck accessories. So this is a truck water pump, truck harmonic balancer. I'm not actually sure which alternator it is. It's probably a truck. And I just made a bracket right here. And then I have a little Heim joint bracket right here that's adjustable. And then I got a belt to fit. Over on here, on the power steering side, I made this bracket, which you can actually see in some of my other videos. But I made this bracket to hold the pump, and it seems to work pretty well. Down under the intake, there's this hose right here, this metal hose. And that's a vent for the cylinder head, and there's actually one in the back as well. And those need to be vented. So what we do is we hook up a hose to them, and I usually just plug them into the upper radiator hose, and that seems to work. I made this little bracket right here, or this little pipe. It's just I want to say maybe 1.25 inches or something like that pipe with a bung welded onto it, so I could put a barb fitting in it. It's very easy to do. I'm pretty sure you can buy these online as well. I'm just really cheap. Up here, we have an aluminum radiator with a couple of fans, a couple of electric fans. The electric fans are wired right into the computer, so the computer tells the fans when to turn on. That's just how they work from the factory, so I just basically duplicated it. The radiator obviously has the cooler for the transmission lines as well. So it has the line here, and then it has a line down at the bottom to go to the transmission. And then, of course, the dump tube if it overheats. The upper radiator hose, I used this one, 22436. And then I'm not actually sure if it's a full hose that I cut or if this is actually two different hoses. But again, there's an adapter in between too. So yeah, do with it what you will. This one happens to be a drive-by-wire setup. So you can see there's no throttle cable. It's all done by wires. And when you do that, you need to have the drive-by-wire box, which is this thing. And that box is like the computer that makes the drive-by-wire work. So let's go take a look at the gas pedal. Down here, I mounted the gas pedal right here. And you can kind of get an idea of where it's mounted if you also have an A-body. It was actually really easy to do. I was surprised how easy it was. I believe I did modify the gas pedal itself. So I cut it off right here and I basically re-angled it so that it matches up with my brake pedal where it's supposed to be. But it works great. I have absolutely no complaints about that. It was super easy to install, at least for me. I just basically drilled a couple holes in the firewall and popped it through. And then I cut the bottom of this and welded it at a different angle so it matches with the car. For wiring, I got one of these fuse boxes. I bought it off of Amazon or eBay or one of those. It's got 4 relays in it and 6 fuses. I actually needed 2 additional fuses for the way that I wired it. So I needed 8 fuses. So I had to add 2 additional fuses to the harness, which are down here, which I don't love. But I think if I was to do this again, I would buy a totally different fuse box. I like the concept of this, but the actual, the fact that I needed to add fuses to it wasn't great. It also doesn't come with extra pins. So when you're adding wires to this box, if you were to screw up one of the pins when you're crimping it together, you'd run out and you basically wouldn't be able to add all of the things. So it would be great if this box came with 10 extra pins or something in it. Unfortunately, it doesn't. So I would recommend not using this box and finding a different fuse panel. For the fuel system, I have an external pump. This is basically an aftermarket version of the Bosch 044 pump. And I just have it hooked up, bolted to the frame. I made a little bracket down here to hold it. And it just clamps on. It's got -6 AN line coming in and -6 AN line going out. And then there's a return line as well, which goes back to the tank. And it all pulls and feeds back through the sending unit at the moment. It seems to work, so I am not intending to change it. The computer is buried down by the battery. You can't see it, unfortunately. I wish I could zoom in and show you, but there's not really much to see. The way I did it was I pulled the inner fender out and I drilled some holes in it and I made a bracket, and that holds the computer. And yeah, it's now buried down there. I don't love how I did that either. I think doing it again, I would maybe try to mount it maybe in there, but I'd hide all the wires behind the fender. That would have come out a little nicer looking rather than having the fuse box right here. It would have been nice to have the fuse box, someplace a little more discreet, I guess. Maybe even inside the body. I'm not really sure. I didn't attempt to do that, so I'm not sure if the LS wires are long enough. Another option would be just basically get rid of that whole setup and go with the Terminator X fuel injection system, because they're around $1,000, but once you actually add up all these parts and the time you're investing in this, it may actually be a beneficial thing to get, because the computer itself, let's say you pay $100 for the computer, maybe you pay $125 to have it reflashed with the VATS removal, the vehicle anti-theft system. And then you buy a fuse box and you spend a few hours wiring it. You're adding up your time and your money, and pretty soon, you're at $500 or $600 in stuff. And, you could have just bought the Terminator X setup for $1,000. Another thing worth mentioning is right here, there are some block-off plates on this engine for various things. The ICT Billet block-off plates are just awesome, and they're super cheap. Really, all the stuff that ICT Billet makes is awesome. I love the stuff. That's where I go to for all my LS swap stuff. Oh yeah, let's check out the oil pan. The oil pan is my biggest mistake. So the oil pan is a truck oil pan at the moment, and it doesn't fit. So what happens is the steering arms actually hit the oil pan, which is no good because you can't turn the wheel lock to lock. So what we need to do is we need to swap that pan out for a Holley muscle car pan or something similar. Now there are aftermarket companies that make muscle car pans, so I may try one of those. Hopefully that video helped you out. If it did, definitely let me know in the comments, or if you have any other additional questions, leave me a comment below, and be sure to like and subscribe and share the video if you found it helpful. So thank you very much. We'll see you on the next one.